So I guess it all started back. When did drilling info, which is kind of a precursor to Enverus, when did that first start?
Yeah, so it's been nearly 25 years. It's crazy to say that that it's been that long. And I started, uh, shoot, I guess it's almost my 23rd year of being there. And when I started, Alan Gilmer is really like every good idea. It started in a bar on a bar napkin, right? And there were core guys that kind of started it all with different backgrounds in the industry. And Alan Gilmer was really the visionary behind it. I don't know if you ever knew Alan, but
I did.
still was a visionary. And he was somebody that was not only that had a really awesome vision, but was also somebody that was willing to take risks and give people opportunities. And I was one of those people that he gave an opportunity right out of school and started working for those guys. And at that point in time, I think we just had permits on a map. And I think we had 4 or 5 core states that we had permits on. We were just starting to dabble in getting production data, mapped out. But at that time, that was a big deal, right? That was right after they kind of made it through that bubble, that .com bubble, and
Hmm.
had ultimately found me in the market. And something I think that still holds true today, and our core values is really democratizing data. And really, Alan had worked for some large players, but he was in it for the small guys as well, the
Hmm.
small independents that maybe couldn't get their hands on some of that information. And so that's how it started, and then obviously very quickly
Yeah.
evolved
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah, it did. I remember when I first started with Dudley, in the early 2000s. We were working for Drilling Info. We were helping you guys gather
Yep.
lease data from a bunch of different counties, and that's kind of that was the next step, I guess. It started with permits and production data, and then we started grabbing leases at the county level out the day books, and that
Yeah,
would grow.
I no, I think and in the spirit of this podcast, land certainly. We talked about Alan being a visionary. We had other visionaries at the company too. Lynn Tesoro comes to mind, who really led our land charge. But Alan had this vision of getting in front, stop being reactive and start being predictive and proactive about things. And certainly land was kind of the tip of the spear on that. And so Alan had the idea of going and getting leasing information, and it was like, all right, well, how are we going to do that? And certainly, folks like you helped, but man, we were pretty creative in our approach. We had
It
college
evolved pretty
student,
quickly.
college students, we had retirees, we had our own employees sleeping in cars and counties that were active because there was just there weren't any hotel rooms and
Yeah.
going and pulling these leases, and I think that was a big inflection point. Certainly, it's I think we could say we wouldn't be where we are at Enverus without going and get that land data right at the beginning, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your core value, democratizing data, we've used it in our company, God, as long as I can remember, when it was drilling info, and you could parse data by the abstract or by the section, and it made us more efficient. It made our clients more efficient. And then, God, as the product evolved, it's really central to everything that we do in land. And I think I got it, like, literally last week. I was talking to our business coach and some of our leadership development things that we do about, hey, I need to have a session with our Enverus representative just to bring us up to speed on, okay, this is how the products evolve. These are the new tools. You've got Prism out, and we talked last time, I think, in our pre-call about you get comfortable with using a product in a way that you've always used the product, but you guys have
Yeah.
done a great job of evolving that. And so we're having to do yearly trainings, with our people to
Yeah.
make sure that we're getting the most out of it. And I think, over the years, as we've worked with, M&A projects, big, acquisition jobs, obviously with our energy clients, um, got due diligence, planning, drilling wells, drilling programs and all that. Those of our clients who really understand how to use your product and use that data and access all that data, man, they're just so much more efficient. They're so much more proactive, to your point about decision making, that the more that they have in front of them, the more and better decisions they can make. When did that, I mean, obviously it's kind of in your core to advance and grow, but when did you guys really see, at what point in time obviously as technology evolved, but when did you guys really feel like, man, we've got something here?
Yeah.
How do we start expanding? When do we change?
Yeah.
Where did it change?
It's a really good question. With the caveat of having been here for, the better part of 22 years, it changes. It continues to evolve. So, it's every few years, something's changing. So you have to, since we started, our concept would be, we have to continue to innovate. We build things, we sell things, but we have to identify and make sure we're looking at what the problems are going to be tomorrow, and are we solving for those problems tomorrow? And we don't come up with those problems. We're talking to people like you and our clients to figure out, hey, what are the challenges you're facing, right? And then how do we come up with an innovative approach to go solve that problem? That's product management 101. That's where we start. We start with the clients and we start with the problem. So I think, to your point, when it changed, certainly going and pulling leasing information and pulling basic filing information, and digitizing those things, that was an inflection point. I would say the second piece is, though, this is a microcosm of what we're talking about here. We had the leasing information. We said, okay, great. Kind of Shell 1.0 hit, the Barnett went crazy. And we said, there's another level of detail when people are running due diligence and going out there and figuring out what's held by production, what's not held by production, what's some of the open acreage out there we could go pull together. There's more diligence that needs to take place. Can we help with that? So, Lynn Tesoro led a big charge. We spun up a digitization team, pretty big GIS team. We said, let's go spatially represent these on a map. So let's pull, whether it's section, township, ranges, let's pull the abstract. Let's figure out actually how to get even the complicated ones down in South Texas, all these portions that we can go figure out. Let's go put it on a map. And we started small. We started in the Barnett. I think we went down and then down to South Texas. And then once we had pretty significant coverage in Texas, West Texas was a lot easier than South Texas, as you can imagine. But but then we happened to expand into North Louisiana. We acquired a company, Brad Broussard's company, called Section Check, and they really made their business on selling maps at that point. But we were interested in not the map sales. We were actually interested in the digitized files, and they had everything for the most part north of Alexandria. And we added that on, right before the Haynesville popped. And so you start to talk about these inflection points and how the industry changes. And it's if you don't evolve and you don't get in front, you won't scale. It's one of those things where you'll have this initial pop and then you'll flatten out a little bit, because innovation, constraints breed innovation. So there has to be something in the market that's constrained and that's hard to get to. And that's we started doing that 20 plus years ago. And I think that core idea and value is still embedded. We still think of ourselves, it's kind of like a startup.
Well, you have to. If you're going to scale a company, you have to, you have to be thinking about where, what's coming in, next week, next month, next year, 10 years from now, and be thinking proactive about that. The funny connection we have, Blue, you asked earlier, how do we know each other? Well, I got my start in the business with Brad Broussard. And, before I even knew what a land was and landman was, I was just a person coloring maps. And the maps I was coloring was the work that they were doing for Section Check. And so Brad was an innovator in that sense as well. He had a vision for that. And I think we all at that time were seeing and realizing the need to, congregate data and represent it in a digestible way. Right about that time, early in the 2000s as well, Dudley was developing a GIS platform that was tied to our database, right, kind of before Esri and Arc Online, and those products really evolved to where you could build that off the shelf. We were trying to do the same thing with our clients' data, that proprietary, confidential data that they hired us to gather and do and lease and everything. But when we coupled that with the work that y'all were doing on the mapping side, the innovation of that for us, that's when data management really changed. We could take our data and our shape files and our mapping product, couple it with the public data that you guys were consolidating, and it really opened things up. It eliminated waste and, us doing lease checks. We used to do gobs of lease checks. You ding our business every time y'all would come out with some new thing. But the fact is, you can't hold on to yesterday. You gotta, embrace
Yeah.
what's in front of you and what's happening today. And I think that's what the industry did. And we certainly experienced and felt a big improvement, as you guys rolled that out.